Okay, hi. This morning I want to take a look at Chapter 4B, and in 4A it really introduced PL/SQL programming blocks and language, but in 4B it really gets into a lot of detail. So with that, let's go ahead and just remember a little bit about 4A. Let's think about 4A. So the objectives of this chapter, I guess I should probably say. So we're going to review Chapter 4A, understand cursors, specifically explicit cursors, and then learn to use 3 different techniques for declaring variables, using row type, percent type, and then field data type descriptions. And then taking a look at loops, taking a look at if, then, else, if, and statements. Putting it together with row type, putting it all together with percent type, fetching information from a cursor, and then a couple different examples of using explicit and implicit cursors, and how to use 2 explicit cursors, and then the idea behind handling exceptions. So remember, in 4A what we've done is you have to set server output on size 4000. We have to remember what our structure is like: a declare block, begin block, and end blocks. The declare, you're declaring variables. Begin, this is where the execution piece takes place. You are using the equals, you're assigning customer first, and with a concatenate, double pipes, a space, and again concatenating a variable called last name, turning that into, or creating first name from that, or current name from that, and then printing the output. So remember, that's what that output looks like. Okay, so that's a quick review of Chapter 4. Now, cursors. Cursors, and let me read through this and tell you a little bit about this and maybe give you some examples. So a cursor is a pointer to a memory location on the database. Okay, so it's a pointer to basically a memory array. So if you're programming, you can think about an array, even think about a table that you build, an ad hoc table that you build out of, I should probably rephrase that. Think about a spreadsheet, and a table that you might put together or see in a spreadsheet. That's the data that might be moved into memory using a cursor, and that cursor points to that location in that data set. Secondly, the cursor is a mechanism by which you can assign a name to the output of a select statement in order to manipulate the information within that SQL statement. Now, again, it's a cursor. It's pulling the results of that select statement and dropping that information into memory, into a memory location, a memory array, if you will. Okay, third item, when a query is executed in Oracle, that result set is produced and stored in memory. Now that is the results of your query. That information is the result of your query. So however you build your select statement, whatever is outputted as a result of that select statement will be put into that cursor. And then you can access it through Oracle will allow you to access it. And now, finally, you may use more than one cursor in a declare block. Okay, so you may have 2 or 3 or 4 different cursors if you want. With what we're going to do with our class, oftentimes one cursor is just fine, but you might find yourself using 2 cursors. And you can open 2 cursors and work with them fairly easily. Remember, the declare block just sets up your variables. It will pull cursors or certain data sets of information into memory. And the begin block is actually where you fetch that information and work with it. So 2 different kinds of cursors. That's what the cursor does overall. 2 different kinds. An implicit cursor is one created automatically for you by Oracle when you execute a query. And this happens transparently in chapters 3A, B, and C. So the results that you're getting, the output you're getting, is the result of an implicit cursor. Now, an explicit cursor, this is what we use in PL/SQL programming. And this is one that you create yourself, and it takes more code with this explicit cursor, but you can do a lot more with it, with the information. You can take that information and then between comparing and contrasting implicit and explicits, you can, with an explicit cursor, you can actually take the information and work with it and manipulate it, where you really can't with that implicit cursor. Think back to 3B and C. What could you really do with that information? Well, not a lot, except view it. And that's great in most cases, but sometimes you want to work with it. Now, let's see. This explicit cursor example, this will be in the declare section, would be, notice that this part, that's your select statement. Okay, whatever information you want to pull, that's part of that cursor. But you have to set the statement up, the entire statement up with cursor, and then whatever that name of that cursor is. In this case, it's called C cursor, but you can call it whatever you want. Typically, it's customer underscore cursor. It kind of follows the same naming convention as sequences and views and everything else, is that you typically call it a cursor at the end. So C cursor, or cursor, which is that command, the name of the cursor, and then is, and whatever is in that select statement is what that cursor is. Remember, it's followed by a semicolon. Okay, now, so we've got these cursors that we're going to create. And I'm going to show you 3 different ways that we can actually declare this cursor and declare variables. So, declaring variables, the %row type attribute provides a record type that represents a row in a database table. So using row type, %row type, if the data type or precision of a column changes, the program automatically picks up the new definition from the database. So what we need to do is declare, create your cursor, no problem there. Now this cursor is only pulling in C last and C first from customer. Okay, when it builds that cursor is going to look like this. So you have the cursor places query results into a memory array that you've named C cursor. So the first record will look like this, the second record will look like this. What this %row type does, if the data type or position of a column changes, the program automatically picks up a new definition. Say if you changed last name from 30 characters wide to 50, using location row %row type, that'll automatically understand that row width has changed and be able to work with it. If you set the data type definition at only so wide and that field actually changes, you'll have an error, because that field will not be, the PL/SQL program will be expecting something different than the database has to offer, so to speak. Okay, so what we're doing here is declare cursor, C cursor is, we have our select statement, but location row space C cursor, that relates back to the name of the cursor, %row type. So anything that you get out of this select statement is %row type. Okay, you'll be able to go ahead and pull that information into the begin block then and work with it, fetch it and work with it. This is just setting it up. Okay, in the next video we'll show you how to work with that. The next piece of this, the next method, is using %type. So that's used to declare variables with relation to the data type of a column in an existing table. So using %type, if the data type or precision of the column changes, so again, if the column changes, the program will automatically see the new definition and work with it. So that's really flexible and that's really good. And what you do is actually define this on a variable by variable case. So if I'm looking for, again, declare C cursor or cursor C cursor is my select statement, I'm looking at C last and C first. Well, what I have to do is declare a variable for every one of these data elements. This variable is not this data element, this variable looks like it. Okay, does that make sense? It is this C last in the declare section is not C last from the select statement, but I name it the same thing so that as the programs grow and as I work with more and more programs, I often name the variables the same so I can understand what fits, C last or C first. Now, with that said, if I say CLast and I'm declaring a variable that this information will fit into, the table that CLast is in is customer dot field percent type. So whatever this definition is from that database, this variable will take on those characteristics of that definition. So, and this is probably the best type to use, the best thing to use, and most of my examples will show this, although I've got one that shows row type. Now, the third way is entering just simply the data type definition, the description. Declares CCursor, okay, cursor CCursor is, select CLast C first from customer, I have my variable name, and then I actually use this field definition, varchar2 30. Now the problem is if that field definition changes, then I have a problem with my program. And maybe not a problem with one single program, but maybe you use last name in maybe 10 or 20 or 30 other programs. So you have a problem within each one of those programs. Now there's some variation within this that we could get away with. We could probably define that column as varchar2 50, and as long as this never went above 50, we'd be fine. If we renamed this or titled this, if we defined it as varchar2 10 and the last name was actually 20 or 30 characters, we have a problem. Okay, so at that point, so at that point, let's go ahead and just close this video with, once again, we talked about cursors, remember where the cursor is, and we defined or learned about 3 different ways of declaring variables. Remember this array, this cursor builds basically an array that looks like this, and that's how row type works. And really that's the same way that all of these percent type works as well. It builds this table out there in memory. So that's really what we're up to. The next video we'll go ahead and start at looking at these loops. So thank you.